Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto Was the Red X. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. Before we get into it though, check out Bilibili Comics. Bilibili Comics is the official trusted place to read hit exclusive series from top creators. Bilibili Comics is a great online webtoons and webcomics reader among all reading apps. Enjoy the best new comics, manhwa, and exclusive webtoons on Bilibili Comics. Download the app now and jump right into it. The link is in the description. Now let's start this video. Tartarus HQ. So you're absolutely sure that it's not just her period or something? Dwayla asked Gizmo as she and Jinx sat in the infirmary, Donnie's skin having gone from pale blue to a slight grayish color like Jinx's. Yeah, I'm sure. If all this shit was her period, believe me we'd be able to tell. Gizmo shouted at Dwayla, the red-haired clown girl back in her normal clownish form, while Jinx sat beside of a conscious Donnie. Ugh, I wish someone would just kill me now and get it over with. Donnie muttered, her voice hoarse and harsh, though Jinx noted she was also taller again. This time, Donnie was up to a little over her chin in height, and considering she looked like and could easily pass as a 12-year-old before, that was saying something. We're not going to kill you, Donnie, though I wish I knew why you keep getting bigger. Jinx stated, then admitted when Gizmo suddenly shot up, his eyes wide when he raised a hand with a wide grin. Eureka! He exclaimed and got looks from the girls in the room. Blinking at the looks, the tiny terror crossed his arms over his chest with a scowl on his face. What, I've always wanted to say that. The bald genius shouted at them and then muttered under his breath while Donnie groaned, her hair turning white and her eyes turning red yet again. Just tell us what you figured out. She pleaded and Gizmo nodded his head for a moment before clearing his throat. Alright, everyone knows how human develops over time. They go from infant, to child, to teen, to adult, to elder. Right. Gizmo questioned and got nods from the girls as they gazed at him quietly. Good, then we're on the same page. Now then, how do ghosts develop? Gizmo questioned and got blank looks from the girls, basically saying that they didn't know. Exactly. We don't know. What little I know is that the equivalent to a baby for a ghost is raw ectoplasm. Gizmo explained and then turned and started to type rapidly on a computer, creating a silhouette of Donnie with her arms outstretched on the computer's screen. Now then, Donnie is 2/3 ghost, which means only a third of her is human. Now then, Donnie, you said you've melted completely once before, correct? Gizmo questioned and Donnie shivered before nodding her head. Alright, what if that was your equivalent to going through the first stage of ghost development, and if that's the case, then your current stage might be the child stage for ghosts developing into what is probably a teenage state for ghosts. Gizmo reasoned while changing the silhouette to show a green flute inside of Donnie. So wait, if that's the case, why is it only happening now? Jinx wondered aloud, and Gizmo frowned for a moment before snapping his fingers. Due to their nature, ghosts probably develop at a significantly reduced rate than humans, meaning a full-grown ghost would probably be in its hundreds, while a teenage ghost could be a couple decades old. Since Donnie is only a third human, her biology must go by her ghostly life cycle, rather than a human one, unlike Danny Phantom himself who clearly goes by his human life cycle, meaning she'll probably be alive long after we're all dead, and will most likely still be young and beautiful to boot. Gizmo reasoned and Whale narrowed her eyes for a moment before nodding her head slowly. So basically, Donnie's hit the stage in her ghostly life cycle where she'll grow into her teenage form. Dwayla summarized and Gizmo nodded his head, while Donnie groaned lightly while rubbing her temples for a moment. So, what's with all the vomit? Donnie asked in a low rasp while grasping at her throat uncomfortably. Like I explained to Temp, your body is producing more ectoplasm than it needs, and is thus creating a runoff of residue in your throat and lungs. Thus as a direct result, your body is thereby compensating by having you release the excess waste in the form of vomit. Now if my theory is correct, then the reason you're producing too much power is because your body is adapting and changing into a more teenage frame. Gizmo explained, and Donnie sighed for a moment before leaning into Jinx, the rosette rubbing the girl's hair before taking her hand away as it suddenly turned into fire. Great, my head hurts, I don't know my own body, my powers are acting weird, and to top it all off, my voice is changing. Donnie grumbled before grabbing a bucket and hurling into it as Jinx moved her bangs out of her face, while her ponytail remained as flames for some reason. Moving back up when she had unloaded another batch of ectoplasmic residue, Donnie groaned in her throat in disgust. Ugh, it's like evil puberty. Donnie complained loudly, and the others decided not to comment on that, while the young gosling girl rubbed her throat. So, do you even know how long this is going to last, Giz? Jinx asked, and the tiny terror shrugged his shoulders with a frown. I can deduce the cause, but this is biology for a radically different species. It's not like I can take a computer and look it up or something. Gizmo reminds and Jinx gives the tiny terror that much before a look suddenly crosses Donnie's features. Shit, hit the deck. Gizmo said quickly and everyone ducked as Donnie sneezed and a jet of white flames flew from her lips. Groaning lightly, the girl then fell back as she let out a low groan and Gizmo huffed. However, given how quick she's grown thus far, I'll guess and say that this should only last a week, 2 tops. Gizmo then mused aloud while Donnie hiccuped and wrapped her arms around her waist. Then why are my eyes red? She questioned and Gizmo gave her a flat look. How many times do I have to say I don't know before you listen, snot rag? Gizmo demanded and Donnie growled lowly while glaring at him furiously. You're so lucky I'm strapped down, you damned midget. Donnie shot back, Gizmo blinking before his eyes took on a furious light. Oh yeah bitch. Bring it on. Gizmo shouted back only for Jinx to snap her fingers, the tiny terror yelping as his chair snapped under him, and he fell to the ground. Enough fighting already. Jinx ordered, and both glared at one another once more before turning from one another. Now then, Donnie, I'm going to get you something to eat. Got any requests? Jinx asked and Donnie blinked before looking towards her feet. Mint ice cream with chocolate chips. She asked while poking her index fingers together, and Jinx shook her head with a small smile before agreeing with the girl. Jinx then got up to head to the kitchen, while Willa stayed behind for only a moment before snickering to herself. As she walked out of the room as well to do only she knew what until she made her next appearance. Forest outside Jump City. Of the many things she had done in her life, sit in a forest to relax was not one of them, but she was actually starting to like it. Which is why she was currently reclining on a tree branch, eyes closed, and a small smile on her lips. I really need to come out here more often. Raven inwardly decided, her cloak, boots, and belt all left on the ground, more so she wouldn't damage any of them more than anything else. Her armor however was left as it was on her person, though she did inwardly wish Naruto had brought her out here when it was earlier. Said blonde was currently climbing trees, his way at least, while Raven opened an eye to see him in pants, black undershirt, and belt only with a smile on his face. He, unlike her, preferred less clothing more for movement than to keep his stuff from being destroyed. Not that I'm complaining. Raven inwardly thought before closing her eye once more and letting off a contented sigh as she felt her eyes slowly close, and she started to breathe in and out lightly. However, her light breathing is suddenly interrupted by a cough, the cough getting worse while she opens her eyes. Raven gasps as she looks all around as a low rumble sounds around her, and the ground starts to shake. Suddenly, the entire forest is consumed in fire, the initial burst of smoke causing her to gag before clutching at her throat. Looking around as the initial burst passes, Raven can't see Naruto anywhere, instead she sees only the flames, roaring and burning all in their path, while somehow leaving her and her perch unaffected. What you have concealed, you shall become. You have no other choice. Your destiny will be fulfilled. A deep gravelly voice echoed from all around, and Raven's eyes widened while some of the flames twisted around, flowing into the air. Raven watches on in muted terror as the flames soon form into a stylized S shape, 4 blood-red eyes opening behind them. The portal must be opened. The same deep evil voice boomed while Raven shook her head before letting out a loud cry. No? As she let out the cry, a flash of light passed before her eyes, drawing her out of her nightmare as a voice reached her ears. Kar-chan. Naruto's voice suddenly came and Raven's eyes bolted open before looking around quickly. The forest was no longer on fire, all was as it should be, and save that she seemed to have fallen from her perch, now resting in Naruto's arms with her arms wrapped around his neck, and letting out several panting breaths. Geez, don't scare me like that, Kar-chan. If I wasn't as fast as I am, you could have been seriously hurt. Naruto said with a relieved sigh, and Raven let out a light shuddering breath before sitting up. What happened? Naruto asked, and the violet-eyed girl shivered once more before looking down for a moment. Nothing. She lied and Naruto stared for a moment, before deciding not to press the issue as he pulled her into a hug. You going to be okay? He asked and Raven was silent this time, unsure of how she should answer. Come on, let's go someplace else. Naruto suggested, Raven mutely allowing him to pick her up and carry her away. Leaning her head into Naruto's shoulder, Raven did all she could to block out her vision, but a tiny twinge of fear still managed to worm its way into her, even in the safety of Naruto's arms. Where are we going? Raven suddenly asked meekly, Naruto frowning at the tone before smiling warmly to the girl. Anywhere people can't find us. Naruto replied, and Raven blinked for a moment before leaning her head back into his shoulder. I'd like that right now. Raven admitted softly and Naruto smiled inwardly before looking around and stopped. Clicking his tongue, Naruto looked to Raven as she stared at nothing and then smirked slightly. Do you have a bathing suit? He asked the violet-eyed girl in his arms, Raven blinking as he caught her off guard. What? Raven asked in reply and Naruto grinned slightly in response. I asked if you had a bathing suit, Kar-chan. He repeated and Raven raised a brow in question for a moment. Well, I figure you don't want to get your clothes wet in the lake, so. Naruto left hanging and Raven turned her head, only to whiten her eyes as she saw the said lake, the pale light of the moon, giving it an almost ethereal glow. I didn't know there was a lake out here. She whispered mostly to herself, and Naruto chuckled lightly. Which is why I asked if you have a bathing suit. Naruto then supplied and Raven nodded his head before tapping him on the shoulder lightly. Looking to his girlfriend with a raised brow, Naruto then tilted his head. "Put me down," she ordered, and Naruto did as bade, the dark Tatana then breathing out before holding out her arms. "Azrath, Metrian, Zinthos," she stated, and a black field formed around her for a moment before suddenly dispersing. Blinking, Naruto then whistled when he saw Raven in a simple black bikini of all things. "You like it?" the girl asked uncertainly while turning slightly and looking down at herself, and Naruto rolled his eyes for a moment. "Of course I do. What's not to like?" Naruto replied, Raven releasing a relieved sigh before Naruto looked around. "Where'd your costume go?" he asked, and Raven stretched out her arms for a moment before answering. "I sent them to the rest of my clothes," she replied in her usual monotone voice, and Naruto slowly nodded his head. "Nice. And by the way, did Starfire pick that out for you or something?" Naruto then asked, and saw Raven blink before looking at him curiously. "Why?" she asked softly, and Naruto took a mock thoughtful expression. "Because a bikini just don't seem like your style, Kar-chan," Naruto replied seriously, and the blush on Raven's cheeks confirmed his suspicion. "Yes, Starfire really needs to stop buying me clothes she'd wear," Raven said mostly to herself before crossing her arms. "And you?" she asked, and Naruto rolled his eyes, took off his shirt and pants, and then backflipped into the water in his boxers. Shaking her head, Raven walked forward and looked down into the water as Naruto came back up, his spiky locks matted down by the water. "So, you going to wear your boxers?" she asked him simply, and the blonde-haired ex-shinobi shrugged his shoulders. "Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like I'm going to head all the way back to the base just for a pair of trunks," Naruto replied, and then stretched his arms out while falling back into the water with a smile, Raven sitting on the bank and letting her legs get wet while she stared at the reflection of the moon. Seeing this, a slim frown crossed over Naruto's features before swimming over to her and placed his arms on the bank beside her. "Is something bothering you?" the blonde questioned, and Raven looked to her hands before shaking her head. "No, I mean, I'm fine, Naruto," she finally said, and Naruto could tell she was lying to him yet again, but decided not to press the issue. Instead, he got out of the water and then moved around behind her and started to rub down on her shoulders. Feeling the tension and knots in her shoulders and back, the blonde frowned before a smirk crossed his lips. "Man, you're tense, Kar-chan, you really need to relax more often," Naruto noted to himself as he inwardly snickered and started to mold his chakra. "Let's see if Hiro-sanin was right," he thought with a mental snicker before channeling chakra to his hands, then forming his lightning wind affinities together. The reaction to this from Raven was a wide-eyed gaping look, before suddenly becoming boneless as she nearly melted on the spot, a dopey smile on her face. "How are you doing that?" Raven questioned with a light groan while Naruto snickered to himself. Some types of elemental chakra have slight healing properties when used at low levels. Fire can warm a person and help relieve tension when used at low levels, wind swirls and thereby rubs and relaxes muscles easily, and lightning causes this really nice tingling feeling when used at low levels. If you know enough about chakra shaping, manipulation, and chakra flow, it's one of the easiest forms of jutsu to use, Naruto explained while Raven swayed from side to side, still smiling to herself while her brain was in a haze. "So since my primary expertise is in chakra shaping, manipulation, and chakra flow, I'm using my lightning and wind affinities together on your shoulders." Hiro-sanin said it's the best combination ever unless you also have fire, and cursed me out because he didn't have either affinity, and only had fire. Naruto explained with a smirk on his face. Raven's only response was a moan as she fell forward, Naruto catching her around the stomach with one arm. Picking up Raven as he did, Naruto walked over to a sturdy boulder and let Raven lean on it as he went back to his massage, his girlfriend eerily purring in delight. Stretching out like a cat, in a similar way to Jinx no less, Raven then crossed her arms and laid her head on him. "Why haven't you ever tried this before?" Raven asked the blonde-haired teen quietly, and Naruto smirked while continuing his ministrations. "You mean besides the fact you're always in that leotard of yours, and this only works on skin to skin, or we're a bit too busy doing other things when you're not?" Naruto reminded the girl, and Raven nearly cooed as he moved down her back and spine, the girl more relaxed now than after 3 sessions of meditating. "Remind me to strip more often so you can do this," Raven mumbled dumbly, and Naruto blinked before instantly agreeing with her. Hiro-sanin, I know I called you a liar before, but you were right," Naruto thought, and could almost swear that he heard an "I told you so" from the long-deceased Sanin for a moment before shrugging it off as his mind playing tricks on him. Naruto then silently returned to treating his girlfriend to the message, leaving her as a boneless mass, while he worked a knot out of her back, and then sighed while looking up to the stars. "I love being able to see the stars for once," Naruto noted, and Raven tilted her eyes up and made a sound to the affirmative, most of her higher brain functions having already shut down. Shaking her head afterwards, Raven then opened her eyes and looked to the stars, a smile crossing her features. "Back on Azarath, we could always see the stars at night, even with all the lights of our city on," Raven noted, and Naruto looked down to her before smiling slightly as he gazed up at the stars once more, then saw one shoot by. Same for me back home, but that's because we didn't have all the artificial lighting like you guys do here. Naruto replied, and Raven nodded her head, well aware of humans' need for modern conveniences, though if given the chance she could live well without a majority of them. So when do you think Bird Brain will call? Naruto suddenly wondered aloud, and Raven took a thoughtful look for a brief moment. When it's most inopportune. She replied, and Naruto nodded in agreement with the girl before smirking mischievously. I know that look. Raven said, only to stop talking and melt into a kiss from Naruto as he captured her lips, both staying silent before they heard her Titan's communicator go off. Hearing it, Naruto sighed before moving his hands off of Raven, annoying her greatly. I swear to Azar, I'm going to kill him. Raven growled out and slowly got up before making her way over to her clothes and fished out her communicator. What? Raven snapped, and Naruto crossed his arms behind his neck as he saw Raven scowl deeply. Something tells me her day off is now officially over. Naruto mumbled out and saw Raven twitch before taking several deep breaths. Fine. I'll be there as soon as I can. Raven, out. She grumbled out bitterly before closing the communicator and held out her arms. Azrath, Metrian, Zinthos. She stated, her costume forming back over her body, while Naruto figured she transported her bathing suit back home. Looks like relaxing in the forest will have to wait for another day. Raven mused while Naruto frowned and then focused some lightning and wind chakra, using it to dry himself off near instantly. Honestly, Naruto, is there nothing you can't do with your chakra? Raven asked the blonde with her arms crossed over her chest, Naruto taking a mock thoughtful look before grinning. When I think of something, I'll tell you. He replied with a grin, Raven rolling her eyes for a moment while Naruto cleared his throat. So, would you mind if I came with you, Kar-chan? Naruto questioned, and Raven gave him a look before taking a thoughtful expression. You're going to kill whatever villain attacked, aren't you? Raven stated flatly while Naruto popped his knuckles as his answer. Fine. She allowed while Naruto grinned and started to get dressed. Jump City. The Titans find themselves walking deep inside of a building, soon coming down below street level, Cyborg confidently walking forward. The interior of the underground room is odd, however, pistons pumping to the left and right, the floor made up of a series of catwalks, and levels of piping below that. So, he's the bad guy, Duchar, Gizmo, Matmod, Killer Moth. Cyborg listed and got a look from Beast Boy at the last bad guy he listed, as the Green Jester had gotten to know Killer Moth, and he wasn't such a bad guy. Really insane? Yes, bad. Well yeah, he was bad, but the report simply stated there was an intruder. Starfire cut in for the others, and Kid Flash smirked his usually arrogant smile. Well, whoever it is, we're gonna totally kick there. He started to say, only to bump into a wide-eyed Nightwing as he stared forward. No? The horrified voice of Nightwing whispered while looking towards a shadowed figure. Following their leader's gaze, the other Titans gaped in astonishment, Beast Boy gasping in surprise, while Kid Flash and Donna, both of which looked at the new villain warily. The man was leaning back into a pillar, one booted foot placed on a raised platform, while the other was perched upon the railing before him, his arms crossed over his chest. It's been a long time, hasn't it, Titans? A month. A year. A millennium. The man noted calmly, coldly, his voice an endless monotone, Kid Flash shivering slightly at the icy tone. Far too long for my tastes, anyway. I was beginning to think I'd never see your smiling faces again. The man commented while turning to face them, one cold gray eye piercing the shadows that covered his upper torso. Slowly, the older Titans managed to come out of their stupors, confused and disturbed by the madman's reappearance. How did you survive? Cyborg questioned while looking towards the man, and he simply remained silent. However, this brought about a change in Beast Boy as he snarled towards him, glaring heatedly and clenching his fists. Terror took you down. Way down. Beast Boy stated while pointing towards the shadowed man as Kid Flash, and Donna wondered whom the man was. Slate. Nightwing hissed and Kid Flash gaped while Donna turned and took a stance, both having heard of that villain from the others before. I don't know where you've been, but you shouldn't have come back. Knight stated while pulling his bow staff from behind his back and twirled it into his stance. I'm still ready. Nightwing declared, and Slade merely shook his head before turning and walking into the light, Nightwing's eyes widening as he saw a slight change to Slade. Now, the madman wore a bandolier made from bullets, what seemed to be an old-fashioned broadsword strapped to his back, as well as his usual bow staff. A semi-automatic rifle is gripped in his left hand and leaned against his shoulders, and a handgun is holstered at his right hip. That's Precious Robin. The man noted coldly while a strange, almost S-shaped symbol flared to life on his forehead. But I didn't come back for you. The man uttered coldly before holding his right hand forward, fire gathering at his palm before the man unleashed a feared yell, a fireball flying towards the Titans. Moving quickly, the teens duck out of the way, Starfire grabbing Nightwing to get him out of the way, Donna following her, while Kid Flash quickly sped out of the way of the fire, while Cyborg ran ahead of the blast, and jumped over towards the churning pistons. Landing with a grunt while slowly getting back to his feet, looking up, Cyborg widened his eyes upon seeing Slade hold out his arms. Ever have one of those days where you just feel happy to be alive? Slade questioned as he conjured a fireball into his right hand and then threw it towards Beast Boy. The green changeling's eyes whitened before he quickly changed shapes and flew out of the way, then returned to human form to fall to the ground next to Cyborg, his eyes wide. Dude. The changeling exclaimed in shock, while Slade moved into a spin in the air before landing on one of the railings of the catwalks. Yeah? Since when can Slade do that? The titanium teen demanded while Slade suddenly jumped up, landing on top of the railing of the catwalk. Chuckling in his throat, the man then took a high spinning leap into the air, before coming down to the floor and landing in a crouch, as the Titans regrouped. Not sure, but he wouldn't be doing it for long. Titans. Go. Nightwing ordered his team and they quickly rushed into action. Beast Boy quickly changed into a velociraptor and lunged forward, however Starfire and Cyborg unleashed a blitz of starbolts and sonic blasts onto the madman. However, Slade mentally scoffed before conjuring a solid wall of fire to stop the blasts, and then vaulted into the air and back to his platform. The show of power left both Starfire and Cyborg looking on in shock. Narrowing his eyes, Nightwing then throws several of his discs forward, the weapons slamming into the wall of fire and freezing it over. Soon it also rose up to freeze over Slade himself, the ice crawling up before covering the madman's head. However, it was all for naught as Slade effortlessly shattered the ice that had confined him, and then cracked the knuckles of his right hand. Leaping back to the ground, Slade finds Donna coming at him, swinging her fists towards him wildly. Narrowly dodging the Amazon's attacks, Slade is then attacked by Beast Boy in his velociraptor form as it rammed into him from the side. Using his momentum to flip back to his feet, the master manipulator narrowed his eyes while Beast Boy screeched towards him. However, this was clearly a distraction as Starfire then came at Slade from the side, hurling starbolt after starbolt at the madman. Grunting lightly, Slade quickly throws up his arms to conjure another shield, the force of her attack still managing to push him back a good distance. Quickly regaining his balance, Slade then tosses a fireball up at Starfire, the Tamaranian princess, quickly holding her hands out to make a small barrier with her starbolts, however is quickly overpowered and knocked out of the sky. Growling, Cyborg then grabs hold of one of the pistons in the building, and rips it free of its moorings. Narrowing his eyes, Cyborg swings the massive bat towards Slade, the villain narrowing his eyes. Quickly creating a small yet intense layer of fire over his body, Slade allows it to burn through the piston, while he crossed his arms behind his back. Gaping at the spectacle, Cyborg stared at Slade completely flabbergasted as only one thing came to mind. Whoa. He said, and Slade scoffed while turning to the titanium teen. Whoa. That's it. No clever comments. Slade questioned while gazing towards Cyborg with a cold gaze. I was looking forward to that. The man admitted, and Cyborg growled while dropping the remains of the piston and lunging at Slade. Throwing a quick punch at the man, he narrowed his eyes as the villain effortlessly ducked under it and raised his hand with his fingers positioned as if to flick something. Raising a brow, as Slade moved his hand before him, Cyborg's eyes whitened as a spark of fire flew from the man's fingers a second before he was flicked. Although the amount of force and heat behind that flick was enough to send the titanium teen flying back before landing in a heap with a groan. However, at that moment, Kid Flash made his move, moving quickly to slam a fist into Slade's face, and move out of the way at the same time. Stumbling back from the force of the hit, Slade was then hit again, this time from behind and knocked to the ground, while the cocky speedster stopped before him. Come on man, you have to be faster than that. Kid Flash snorted, and Slade threw a fireball at him, only for him to quickly move out of the way and behind Slade. Rolling back into a crouch, Slade then flipped back and landed behind Kid Flash, only for him to move out of the way as Slade tried to grab hold of him. I really hate super speed. Slade muttered under his breath while Kid Flash slid into a crouch and then came at him running once more. Forming another fireball into his right hand, Slade mentally frowned as Kid Flash then turned and started to run around him. Raising a brow, Slade then gasped as he gripped his throat, the air suddenly growing thinner and thinner. Your fire trick is nice and all, but without it you won't be so tough, so a little vacuum should take care of it. Kid Flash noted with a smirk, and Slade fell down to one knee for a moment before lifting the arm with a riffle, and narrowing his single eye. The man fired a second later. The bullet screamed through the air and nailed Kid Flash, tearing through his right knee in mid-step, sending the speedster flying forward with a scream, skidding along the ground before slamming into a piston back first. Bart. Knight cried out while running to his friend with Donna flying his way as well. However, Slade then got back to his feet and took several deep breaths. And you're all but useless without your legs, Slade stated coldly while Kid Flash gripped at his injured knee and tried to get up, only to fall back down. As he watched this, Slade aimed his weapon at the speedster once more. You could be more than just a little problem to me in the future, Slade noted while Beast Boy flew overhead as a hawk, only to swoop down at the man and pulls the weapon from Slade's grip before flying off with it. Narrowing his eyes, Slade then quickly did several jumps and flips up the facility, soon landing on a high catwalk, the Green Titan following him while dropping the gun from the height. Reverting to human form and landing on the catwalk, Beast Boy then transformed into a Triceratops and lunged at Slade. Scoffing at the attack, Slade kneels down and touches his right knuckles onto the ground, instantly sending traces of fire across its width and towards the green changeling. Seconds later, the section that Beast Boy was on collapses due to the fire weakening it. The teen falls down, changing into his human shape for a moment, before then turning into a vampire bat and flying away from the falling debris. Meanwhile, with Kid Flash, Knight was looking at his friend's torn up knee with a grimace, shards of bone visible through the skin. Turning to where Slade stood confidently, the former boy Wonder narrowed his eyes. Looking to Wonder Girl, Knight saw a furious look in her eyes as well. "Donna, go," Knight ordered, and the dark-haired girl nodded before taking off and lunging at the man, a deep scowl on her face. Flying towards Slade, Donna watched as he pulled his handgun out and took aim at her before firing off several shots. Donna merely raised her arms and used her bangles to deflect the bullets before ramming into Slade. Gritting her teeth, she then turned to the side, slamming through a wall before turning up, and then came down with Slade through the roof, where she let him fall to the ground. Flying down towards where Slade had been sent, Donna gasped as he reached out of the dust and grasped her throat. Impressive. However, I expected as much from an Amazonian, Slade noted coldly before twisting on his heel and throwing Donna to the side, the girl flipping in the air to stop herself, only to scream in pain when Slade hurled a ball of fire into her, slamming her back into a wall where she fell down, singed and smoking lightly. Seeing his other friend fall, Nightwing narrows his eyes before looking down at Kid Flash. The speedster gives him a weak grin and a nod before crawling away as Nightwing runs at Slade, twirling his bow staff as he does. Roaring out, Knight jumped up and swings his staff down at the man, only for him to slide back and out of the way. "Catch me if you can, Nightwing," Slade remarked coldly before flipping back and hopping up before disappearing into a veritable forest of turning gears. Honestly, what is with him and turning gears? Nightwing wondered to himself before following after the madman, jumping up onto the catwalk and soon landing on a slowly turning gear. Looking around, Nightwing then spots Slade rising on a gear, his own staff in hand. Narrowing his soul eye, Slade feels fire flow along his staff, while Nightwing twists into a stance. Unleashing a savage yell, Slade jumps into the air and brings his staff down on Nightwing's, their two staffs slamming together audibly. Narrowing his eyes, Nightwing pushes back on Slade's staff, while flipping out of the way of a swing. Landing on a tuning gear, Nightwing walks backwards on it while Slade walks forward. Still fighting one another with their staffs, Nightwing growls while putting all of his strength into his strikes. However, it is clearly all for naught, as soon enough, Slade growls low in his throat, swinging his flaming staff and burning Nightwing's own in half. Eyeing the smoldering half of his weapon for only a moment, Nightwing then looks back at Slade, the villain still holding his own staff. "Take my word for it, Nightwing. You shouldn't play with fire," Slade states darkly before suddenly twisting into a flaming roundhouse kick, sending Nightwing glowing and smoking down to land in front of a distant horizontally mounted gear. "It really has been nice seeing all of you again," Slade noted mockingly while then jumping down, past the gears and reached down to grab Nightwing by his hair and drag him back to the main room. Looking down into the room, Slade then threw Knight down to the floor, close to where Cyber lay groaning in pain. "Now I need only wait for," Slade started to say, only for a swirling object to slam into him and rip and grind through him, and a wall behind him. Groaning, Nightwing looked to where the attack came from, and saw Raven and his smirking Naruto dressed the same as he'd been earlier, the grey utility belt around his waist, the only addition to his arsenal. Raven, however, looked shocked and fearful as she noticed the symbol glowing brightly on Slade's brow. "I think that's more than enough out of you, candy corn face," Naruto noted while brushing off his hands and got a look from Raven. Yeah, you go check on your friends while I deal with candy corn face for you, Card-chan," Naruto offered flippantly while making his way forward, grimacing as he saw the condition of Donna and Kid Flash. "Yikes, and here I thought I was harsh on them as Red X." The teen mumbled quietly, then reached up and pulled off his bucket hat. "Here, Green Bean," Naruto says while tossing the bucket hat over to Beast Boy, the green teen looking at him strangely as he grins towards him. "Hold that for me, will you?" he asked with a grin before looking up as Slade pulled himself back to his feet with a light groan and looked down at him. "Aizumaki namikaze, Naruto," Slade noted while a hole in his stomach and armor sealed shut, Naruto stopping and arrowing his eyes as it did. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person," Slade then said while flipping over the railing and landed in a low crouch, reaching back and unsheathing the broadsword he'd been carrying on his back, while Naruto frowned. Reaching into his belt, Naruto then pulled out a pair of kunai from his belt, held one in either hand, and then looked up and glared up at Slade. "Alright, so how exactly do you know me?" Naruto questioned while staring at Slade, and the man narrowed his slate-gray eyes. Behind Naruto, Raven made her way over to Donna and healed her, allowing the Amazonian to awake from her slight concussion. "Ouch, and I though Diana could hit," Donna mumbled, and Raven shook her head before looking over to Kid Flash, who was still laid out on the ground. "Come on, I might need your help with him," Raven stated, and Donna nodded her head while following her over to Kid Flash, Slade mentally chuckling as he watched the girl silently. "Yo, candy corn face," Naruto suddenly called, drawing Slade's attention back to himself, a frown on the blonde's face. I asked you a question, buddy. Naruto reminded darkly, and Slade crossed his arms while looking down at the blonde-haired ex-shinobi. You mean besides the fact my dear daughter has been keeping a very detailed file on you, Tartarus, and the Titans? Slade questioned in reply and saw a scowl cross Naruto's features, while Beast Boy blinked. So wait, does he mean the Ravager is his actual daughter? Beast Boy asked while scratching his head, and Cyborg grunted. Well, that certainly explains the family resemblance. Cyborg grunted out while Raven ordered Donna to pop Kid Flash's leg back into place. This is really going to hurt, but please bear with it. Raven asked, and Kid Flash nodded while Donna bit her lower lip before doing as told, Kid Flash screaming in pain as Donna did as told. Wincing, Raven then held her glowing hands over his wounded leg and closed her eyes, concentrating on pulling the shattered pieces of his kneecap back into place, more than trying to heal the wound completely. Meanwhile, Naruto and Slade glare at one another for a moment before Naruto swings his two kunai and twirls them in his hands. Alright, candy corn face, ready for a lesson in pain? Naruto asked the older man, and Slade chuckled lightly before reaching back to remove his broadsword from his back and held it in his right hand, his handgun in his left hand. More than ready. And I believe it's time you and the Titans learned why I was once known and feared as Deathstrike the Terminator. Slade replied coolly, Naruto rolling his eyes as he twirled his kunai in hand before gripping them like he would the hilt of one of his normal swords. Well, a battle of blades that actually sounds like fun for once. Naruto mused with a grin before holding his kunai at his sides and closing his eyes. But seeing as I don't want to call out the Kusanagi right now, and my own ninjutsu are back home, I'll just have to settle for using this neat little trick I picked up from a samurai. Naruto mused aloud, a grin on his face as he flowed his chakra through his kunai, instantly causing his chakra to form from the weapons as two ninjutsu-length beams of blue energy. Wicked dude. It's like he's using a lightsaber. Beast Boy suddenly says while nearly drooling, Naruto rolling his eyes as he then looked up at Slade for a moment before grinning and making a come on motion. Narrowing his eye and stepping up onto the railing of the catwalk he was on, Slade then roared out while jumping into the air and bringing his sword down towards Naruto. Smirking, Naruto took a few steps back and then twirled his twin chakra sabers in his hands for a moment. Alright, candy corn face, let's dance. Naruto said before lashing out, swinging his sabers at Slade, the one-eyed man mentally cursing as he quickly jetted back with his fire abilities. That technique wasn't in Rose's files, then again, I don't think I should be too surprised he'd been holding this one back. Those blades are made out of raw energy, not metal. You can't lock a blade that's insubstantial like that, meaning those are strictly used for killing an opponent, and I'm his target. Sliding to a halt at that thought and noting a surprised look on Naruto's face, Slade then fired his gun at the blonde-haired teen. Blinking for a moment, Naruto then held up one hand to make a half-hand sign and smirked. 1000 blades jutsu. He exclaims while dozens of blades of wind flew around his body, slicing the bullets into pieces before the blonde then crouched down and launched himself forward. Swinging his chakra sabers at Slade, the one-eyed man twists and turns to evade having his head lopped off by the blonde, before lashing out with his broadsword in a high swing. Moving his arms up, Naruto smirked while blocking the blade with the kunai portion of his twin chakra sabers. Come on, you can't be this weak. Naruto says with a shake of his head before moving back, causing Slade's sword to fall forward, while he then lunged forward and kneed the madman in the chin. Stumbling back for a moment, Slade looked back to the blonde only for a roundhouse kick to connect with his face. Moving into a roll, Slade rolled out of the way as Naruto swung both chakra sabers, carving an X out of the ground. Grunting, Slade then flipped back to his feet and tossed his handgun to the side, the weapon clearly useless to him. You want more? Fine, then there's no more need for me to hold back. Slade uttered darkly while narrowing his soul eye, flames roaring to life over his body and down the length of his blade. Whistling lightly, Naruto twirled his twin chakra sabers before flipping the one in his left hand into a reverse grip and ducking into a low stance. Roaring out, Slade then launched himself forward, flames trailing behind him as he swung his blade at Naruto. The blonde absently noted that the heat of the blade was by far hotter than even one of Sasuke's Kaiten Jutsu. Better make it a priority not get hit by one of these attacks. The blonde muses inwardly while forming a chakra string onto the kunai in his left hand and flips back and into the air. Rearing his left arm back, Naruto then throws the blade, chakra blade and all towards Slade. Widening his soul eye, Slade quickly rolled out of the way of the attack, while Naruto moved his hand to the side, the blade following his orders, and spinning towards the one-eyed man from the side. I can see why Rose was so interested in this one, he has so many interesting skills at his disposal. Slade notes to himself while flipping over the blade, and concentrates a ball of fire into his left hand. The one-eyed man then hurls a burst of fire straight for Naruto, the blonde merely rolling his eyes, as he calls his chakra saber back to his hand with the chakra string attached to it, and rolls out of the way of the flames. Not letting up, Slade quickly launches himself towards Naruto, forming an after image of flames to shoot towards the blonde as he suddenly stops. Whistling lightly, Naruto evaded the image while sliding to a stop and narrowed his eyes onto the man. This guy has even more control over fire than anyone in the elemental nations, at least without some kind of Kekkei Jinkai like the Mizukage. Naruto noted to himself with a thin frown, his eyes narrowing on Slade as he suddenly slams his fists into the ground, a jet of flame sliding towards the blonde. Nice, I want to try that. Naruto couldn't help but think to himself while moving out of the way of the flames, and flipped up into the air before twirling his sabers in hand for a moment. Naruto then smirked as he slashed both in an X shape, causing a burst of X-shaped energy to flow off of them and towards Slade. Mirage Blade. The blonde said with a smirk, while Slade fired 2 blasts of fire from his feet to rise up into the air out of the way of the attack. Watching the attack, Slade saw it slice clean through the wall behind him, and then continue for a good while before finally dissipating. Note to self, never let that hit me. Slade thought to himself before flipping in the air to land on a catwalk, Naruto grinning as he jumped up, only to move with lightning-fast speed towards the man. Cursing silently, Slade quickly formed a wall of fire around his body, Naruto sliding to a stop as it formed. Lunging out of the flames, Slade came swinging at the blonde-haired youth. Ducking down to evade the fire sword, Naruto then channeled his wind chakra and created a quick burst of wind, reeling his arm in as he did. Naruto created a vacuum out of the air, Slade's soul whitening, as the flames that had been protecting him died out. The blonde then smirked before he suddenly blurred into motion and jumped into a kick to Slade's shin, throwing him up into the air where Naruto twisted into an upwards roundhouse kick, knocking Slade into the ceiling head first. Dudes, we were getting our cess handed back to us on a silver platter by Slade earlier, right? Beast Boy asked while helping Nightwing over to Raven, the Titan's leader grunting for a moment before replying. Yes. He said with an angry hiss, and Beast Boy looked back to where Slade was now head first in the ceiling, literally, before Naruto grabbed his ankles and ripped him out, only to flip over the man and kick him in the back, sending him flying back down into the ground where he slammed into it hard enough to cause a small tremor and explosion of dust and dirt. Then how come Nar is tearing Slade a new one so easily? Beast Boy asked, and Nightwing twitched violently while glaring at the green jester, only for Cyborg to chuckle and answer the green-furred Titan. Because Beast Boy, Nar happens to be a super ninja with enough power to take on big league superheroes and villains, but doesn't do so because his girlfriend lives here in Jump City, and he doesn't want to leave her. Cyborg offered, and Raven nodded her head in agreement while continuing her work on Kid Flash's leg. She had to be meticulous in this case, which meant Naruto had to keep Slade busy or she could mess up, thus crippling Kid Flash for life. Okay then, when did he learn that awesome sword thing? I mean, with those in his blonde hair he is starting to look like Zero. Beast Boy then asked with a grin, and Cyborg shrugged his shoulders before looking back to where Naruto was landing on the ground in a low crouch, a smirk on his features, while Slade lay in a dust cloud. Slowly, Slade got back up and glared towards Naruto, the blonde tilting his head, as he saw the man brush off his arms as if nothing had happened. Impressive Uzumaki-san, however, you should know that you're going to have to do better than that if you want to stop me. Slade stated coldly before crouching down and unleashing his fire from his feet, jetting towards the blonde and swinging his flaming sword at him. Moving to the side to evade the attack, Naruto then lifted his sabers up, slicing through Slade's flame sword, before twisting into a kick to Slade's face. The masked madman stumbled back from the blow, only for Naruto then lunge forward and ram his elbow into his gut, then flip back into a kick to Slade's chin, knocking him off his feet and into the air. Shut up, candy corn face, I'm really getting sick of hearing you talk. Naruto stated while sliding under Slade and slammed his feet into the man's back, sending him flying up into the air. Twisting around, Naruto came back out on his feet and twirled his blades in hand before jumping upwards. Frowning to himself, Naruto slammed his hands into Slade's spine, thus slamming the man upwards, before he then swung both of his blades, cutting the man in half and falling back to the ground. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto noticed the lack of blood and frowned deeply as a result. Dude. Beast Boy called out while Nightwing looked at Naruto incredulously, even given he'd done the same thing to Orochimaru, but then again he could regenerate. Seeing the looks from them, Naruto scowled deeply before he held up a finger and looked towards them with a slight glare. Before someone starts on some rant or heaven forbid a lecture about me not killing, this fucker isn't even bleeding. Naruto stated, Starfire, Donna and Nightwing all noticing and frowning when they saw that he was right, and given the size of the wound that shouldn't be possible. Also, I've pounded my fists and feet into him with enough force to pulverize bones, he shouldn't have been standing. Naruto added after that while crossing his arms, his chakra sabers beam blades harmlessly flowing through his body. Best part about them was that since it was his chakra powering them, that they couldn't hurt him unlike that stupid wind version of Danzo's. Also, his armor should be cracked, broken, and in pieces as well, however, as you've seen that isn't the case. Naruto continued with a scowl, and Cyborg nodded his head, knowing the limits to even the strongest metals, and Naruto's strength could definitely reach those levels. And lastly, this fucker is practically saturated in demonic energy, so unless he was a demon in life before, something is seriously up. Naruto finished and Donna started to put two and two together as she realized what he was saying. So shut up and watch for a moment, he's definitely not down. Naruto stated flatly while gazing towards Slade, the Titans not understanding what he meant until they heard the man chuckle lightly. Ah, so you figured it out, did you? Intelligent as well as fierce, I can respect that, Uzumaki-san. Slade's voice echoed out hauntingly, a low demonic rumble accompanying it this time, before Slade's body suddenly twitched, then his arms moved upwards. Holy shit. Slade's a zombie. I knew it. Beast Boy shouted while pointing towards the body, his friends all giving him an annoyed look, while Slade's head snapped back into place, and his eye flared open. Moving around for a moment, his upper torso then got up, his arms acting as legs to hold it up. Naruto was right, there is no blood from any of his wounds. Nightwing noted to himself with a frown, and Naruto nodded his head at the side. Yeah, and check this out. His armor is self-healing as well. Naruto stated while motioning to Slade, where cracks in his armor were indeed repairing themselves and leaving him in prime condition to continue. Yes, it's quite useful, wouldn't you say, Uzumaki-san? Slade questioned, and Naruto merely scowled while Slade suddenly started moving. Using his arms, he somehow walked over to his legs, before pushing his severed torso against his severed legs. Flames then suddenly roared to life between the two sections, before both slid back together, and Slade sat up, the long gash that was once his midriff sealing shut, while he dusted his arms off, as if this were a common occurrence. So you're immortal or something like it, right? Naruto asked the one-eyed man with a feeling of deja vu, while also looking towards Slade dully, the masked madman nodding his head only once, and causing the blonde to grimace visibly while rubbing his face. Oh man, not another fucking immortal, that's going to make this fight even more annoying. He grumbled aloud, and the Titans looked at him incredulously, Raven merely shaking her head as she knew he was talking about Orochimaru, Madara, and other villains of the like back in his world. You've actually fought immortals before? Cyborg demanded and got a bland look from Naruto. 3 actually, but that's not the point, and right now, I need to unleash some misplaced aggression on Candy Corn Face. Naruto stated while making his way towards Slade, the man merely narrowing his eye before flowing fire into the hilt of his sword, creating a fluid blade made out of fire. Sadly, I don't feel inclined to allow you to have your way any longer. Slade stated before lunging at Naruto, the blonde-haired ex-shinobi humming a tune to himself as he came to a stop, and stepped to the side to evade Slade's blade. Looking to the man with one eye, Naruto then smirked while twisting around and slicing him through his midriff and kicking him away. Watching the man slowly start to get up, Naruto's smirk turned into an amused grin while twirling his chakra sabers in hand. Oh yeah, now this is so going to be fun, a sparring partner I can go all out on without worrying about his health. Naruto muses aloud, forming a chakra string on both of his chakra sabers, and then hurling them towards Slade. Seeing the weapons coming, Slade ducked to the side, only for Naruto to control them with the chakra strings, causing them to spin as they flew towards the one-eyed man. Widening his soul eye, Slade was cut into 3 pieces by the 2 weapons, only for him to quickly heal from the damage, while Naruto called his blades back to his hands. Ha. Now then, Candy Corn Face, let's see just how many pieces I can cut you down to, before you finally stop regenerating. Naruto says before lunging at Slade, the masked madman swinging his sword at the blonde, only for him to flip over the attack, and lop off his arms from behind. Twisting around, Naruto then cut Slade in half at his midriff, twisted under to slice the remains of his torso in half, and then lopped off the pieces of his head from his neck. Dude. That was so sick. Yet strangely awesome. Beast Boy suddenly noted while Naruto flipped away from Slade, the man twitching before reforming his body once more, a light grunt escaping his throat as he did. That is beginning to get very annoying. Slade noted dully, and Naruto shrugged with a smirk before then launching himself at Slade once more. The man quickly formed a fireball in his hand to counter, slamming it into Naruto's stomach and sending him flying back. Flipping in midair, Naruto slid back along the ground before moving down and slowing himself into a crouch. What does it take to actually kill this fucker? Naruto wondered aloud while moving back, Nightwing looking at the blonde incredulously. Is he enjoying this? Nightwing wondered aloud, Naruto suddenly launching himself towards Slade and swinging his sabers to cut off the man's arms. Seeing this, and remembering Naruto's earlier words, Cyborg chuckled for a moment while shaking his head, the said blonde kicking Slade to the ground with a deep frown. He said misplaced aggression earlier night, he means he's venting out all of his frustrations out on Slade, and boy does it look like he's had a ton of built-up aggression lately. Cyborg noted mostly to himself, and Beast Boy winced before looking to the other Titans curiously. What do you dudes think pissed him off? The green changeling wondered, and Cyborg grimaced to himself. Being turned into a vicious psychotic monster and then fighting that freaky snake guy. Cyborg offered, and Nightwing frowned for a moment before wincing as well as he remembered something else to piss off the blonde. Raven being kidnapped and him unleashing hell upon a troop of Slade bots and a group of enemy ninja. He offered as well, Beast Boy and Cyborg nodding their heads, while Raven sighed to herself before deciding to voice her opinion. Or maybe it has to do with the fact you guys interrupted us when we were having fun. And I asked him if he was going to kill the villain who attacked when he wanted to come with me, and he said he would. Raven mused aloud and saw her teammates gape at the girl as she finally finished working on Kid Flash's leg, and Donna helped him up. Alright, I managed to move all the bones back into place, but I'd still recommend getting him to a doctor as soon as possible. His leg should heal right, but it doesn't hurt to be careful. Raven stated, and Nightwing nodded his head before looking to where Naruto was watching, as Slade's body popped its bones back into place with several disturbing crunches and snaps. Right, Raven, you Beast Boy and Cyborg hang back on the off chance Naruto needs any help. Me and the others were of very little help here, and are the most heavily injured. We'll go and get Kid Flash to a hospital for his leg. Nightwing suggested and then groaned as Starfire helped him to his feet, his ribs protesting the treatment. And Raven, guys be careful. Night added, Raven nodding her head while Starfire and the others left, Cyborg and Beast Boy hanging back, only to hear Naruto chuckle. Man Candy Corn Face, you really don't know when to quit, do you? Naruto noted to himself while Slade clenched his fists, forming another burst of fire into them, and lifted them up to slam into Naruto's chin. The blonde teen was sent flying back, only to flip in midair, and made contact with the far wall. Kicking off of the wall and nearing Slade once more, the teen lashed out at the one-eyed man once more, cutting his head off first, and then forming a half-hand seal with one hand. 1000 Blades Jutsu. The blonde cried while the hundreds of blades of wind started to rip and shred Slade's body to bits and pieces, his severed hand flying to the side, while Naruto flipped over the remains. Dude, I really doubt Nar's going to need our help anytime soon. Beast Boy suddenly mumbled with both Raven and Cyborg, agreeing while gazing towards where Naruto was looking down at the mass of armor, cloth, and bone that had once been Slade. I wonder if you can get up from being turned into paste. Naruto wondered aloud for a moment, only to blink as Slade's remains started to reform, slowly moving back together, the master schemer slowly stumbling for a moment as he tried to regain his sense of balance. Well shit, what do I have to do? Destroy every last molecule of your being before you'll finally stay down. Naruto wondered aloud before shrugging his shoulders, a grin forming on his face as lightning started to arch down his arms. Well, either way, it looks like you're up for another couple rounds, so come on Candy Corn Face. This party is getting crazy. Naruto cried while twirling his blades in hand, and Slade made a mental note not to piss the blonde off after he got his true flesh and blood back. It wouldn't be good for him in any sense of the word. Sadly, I still have a message I need to deliver, and so I must end this little game of yours. Slade stated coldly, and Naruto gave the man a look, half amused and half questioning. Really? And how exactly do you plan on getting past me? You can barely touch me, Candy Corn Face. I mean, yeah, you might be able to wear me out after about a day or two of non-stop fighting, but that's not looking too likely. Naruto mused aloud, and Slade mentally concurred with the blonde, as it was he was sadly outmatched physically. Naruto's powers over wind and lightning rivaled his of fire, and he was on a very limited schedule, which only left him with his ace in the hole. Something his current employers thought he'd need. Though that will be very simple, Uzumaki-san. Slade mused before lunging forward and ducked under swing from Naruto's twin chakra sabers, before quickly grabbing his wrists. Slade then quickly released Naruto's wrists and slammed his hands into his stomach, pushing as much of the demonic energy inside of him into the blonde as he possibly could. The effect of which was Naruto's eyes widening, then being sent flying back into a wall, only for them to turn blood red, as a familiar foul chakra started to flow freely from within him. What the hell? Cyborg wondered while tapping his ear, and started to scan the strange energy readings he was getting off of the blonde. Dude, is Nar okay? Beast Boy wondered aloud, only to gape as Naruto dropped his sabers, his canines lengthening and his whisker marks deepening on his face. Oh no. Raven whispered as Naruto suddenly growled low in his throat, his eyes wide and now glowing blood red, his nails lengthening into sharp claws, while his pupils turned into thin slits. Now then, since you'll be a bit preoccupied with trying to stop your tenant, I can finally pass along my little message. Slade said to himself while Naruto gripped his head, red energy forming around him, some of the chakra condensing into bone-like plates like it had for the beast, and even forming a crimson-red skull-shaped mask. Chuckling as Naruto fought with his tenant, Slade got up and looked over to Raven, Beast Boy and Cyborg, quickly moving to protect her. There's no way we're letting you get anywhere near to Ray, dude. Beast Boy stated while Cyborg aimed his sonic cannon at the man, Slade raising a brow as he walked towards him. Narrowing his eyes, Cyborg fired a blast from his cannon into Slade, only for the man to shrug it off and continue forward. Unleashing more blasts did nothing but yield a similar effect. Beast Boy then turned into a wolf and lunged at Slade, only for the man to bat him to the side, while getting closer to Raven. Firing another blast into Slade's chest, Cyborg widened his eyes when he saw a hole through the man's seal shut. Narrowing his soul eye, the man then formed a fireball into his hand, and slammed it into Cyborg's stomach. The titanium teen was lifted off of the ground and sent flying away by the blast, leaving a wide-eyed Raven to stare at him. Hello birthday girl. Ready for your present? Slade questioned coldly, Raven's eyes widening before she quickly forms her familiar black energy into her hand and slams it into Slade's chest, pushing him back and lifting him up, causing him to slam into a wall above the machines. Flying up to survey the damage, Raven manages to sigh in relief upon seeing nothing but smoke. I have a message for you, Slade suddenly states while floating out of the smoke and towards the girl. Raven prepares to attack him again, only for him to grab her arm and clench down on it, Raven gritting her teeth as blinding pain surges through her body. Watching on coldly, Slade waits for only a moment more before releasing Raven, causing her to fall down onto a gear wheel. Groaning lightly, Raven slowly gets up and checks over herself, only to see the armor on her right arm has been burned away, a red S-shaped symbol now glowing on her forearm. It has begun, Slade suddenly says in a cold, calm tone, his fiery red aura and sparks of energy flowing over his form as he floats upwards. The room then begins to shake, Slade forcing smoke and debris to slam into things around the room. Cyborg narrowly evades some of it before rushing towards the exit, more explosions tearing apart the building. Beast Boy is soon to follow his friend, running as the catwalks that make up the floor start to buckle, lava and flames rising up from beneath them. More explosions rock the building, a massive gear falling onto the catwalk Naruto is situated on, throwing him forward and onto a sloping downwards plane. Still watching on in a mix of horror and shock, the sight of Naruto slowly sliding down towards the lava causes her to finally find her voice. Stop, the girl exclaims while black energy flows from her body, flowing over everything around her to literally stop everything. From Cyborg running madly, to Beast Boy in mid-transformation, and finally, Naruto on a catwalk, gripping his head tightly. Gasping in shock for a moment, Raven then wraps her arms around her body before spotting the levitating Slade, arms spread wide and his head elevated. How did I? Raven started to question, only for a familiar voice to choose that moment to interrupt her. You might be able to stop time, birthday girl, but you can't stop me. Slade notes as his body flares red for a moment, then his eye peers down at the girl as he crosses his arms behind his back. You can't stop any of it, really. Slade notes coldly while Raven slowly backs away from the man, eyes wide in fear. I have to say, Raven, when I found out the truth, I was very impressed. Slade notes to himself while slowly walking towards Raven, gesturing rubble out of the way as he does. All this time, I had no idea. The power lurking inside you. The glorious destiny that awaits. Slade noted mostly to himself before cupping his chin as he came closer to the girl, a thoughtful look in his eye. It's always the quiet ones, isn't it? Slade muses to himself while Raven clasps her hands to her head, trying desperately to awaken from the nightmare she's suddenly found herself in. Shaking her head, Raven then turns and runs, hoping to find some place safe from Slade. But honestly, did you think you could just blow out the candles and wish it all away? Slade questions coldly, slowly following after Raven as she makes her way up a beam, towards its elevated end. Today is the day it begins. Slade states flatly, his cold eyes staring at Raven intently as he corners her and leans into her face. It is going to happen. And no matter what you wish. Slade states while Raven turns away from him. No matter where you go, no matter how you squirm. Slade continues, his cold eye unchanging as he glares at her. There is nothing you can do to stop it. He states, and Raven quickly turns to face him, her eyes flaring white as she passes through the wall behind her as her soul self. Flying away from where Slade had been, Raven soon spots Naruto down below and flies down to him. Landing next to him, Raven places a hand onto the blonde-haired teen's chest, energy flowing from her hands and into the blonde-haired youth. Her energy flows over the blonde-haired teen, causing him to awaken with a gasp, then groan as he holds his head with one hand and gazes at Raven with one eye open. Kar-chan. He asks only for Raven to form her energy around him and herself, bringing them both into a dome of energy that then vanished, Slade raising a brow for a moment before chuckling as he watched on silently, then decided to give chase to the two. Streets of Jump. Raven's soul self rises up out of the ground, soon ejecting Naruto onto the street, a cathedral at the end of the block, while Naruto groans in pain. Raven soon forms out of her soul self as well, looking over herself for only a moment before moving over to Naruto. Naruto, are you alright? She asks the blonde, and he gives a pained grin before grunting as he tries to get up. Should I think Candy Corn Face somehow managed to overload my chakra network with demonic chakra? Naruto replied while placing a hand to his head, Raven idly noting the crimson mask formed over half of his face, the eye covered somehow looking more sinister than the one that remained uncovered. Looking around, Naruto noticed all the people and animals were frozen in place. How in the... Naruto started to ask before grimacing as his chakra flared again, scorching the ground beneath him as it did. Naruto, you need to get your power under control. Raven suddenly said while sitting next to the blonde, and he grunted before noticing the red mark on her wrist. So this has something to do with your old man? Naruto questioned, and Raven went silent, clasping a hand onto her wrist, while Naruto slowly gets back to his feet and frowns as he struggles to keep his balance. What the hell is Kyuubi doing? No better question, why is this overload affecting me so harshly? The blonde wondered before remembering he hadn't had an overload like this since before the necklace he'd gotten from Tsunade was destroyed. I never wanted this day to come. And when it did, I just wanted it to stop. Raven said to herself before letting out a sigh and looking around. I guess I got my wish. She nodded dryly and Naruto nodded his head for a moment before grimacing as he reached to the mask on his face. Oh shit, is this fucking thing going to form every time the damn Kyuubi's chakra starts acting up? Naruto had to wonder to himself, though Raven surmised it might not be because of Kyuubi's chakra, instead being something about Naruto himself, but she also decided not to voice her opinion on the matter. In any case, this is one hell of a birthday card, Chan, and I thought mine was bad. Naruto noted and Raven gave a weak smile before both looked up and saw Slade land nearby. Hello again. Slade noted crisply and Naruto frowned while glaring towards the one-eyed man heatedly as he came closer to them. As if we didn't have enough problems. Naruto mumbles under his breath while Slade starts to march forward, arms crossed behind his back. I have a message for you and I will deliver it, whether you like it or not. The man states flatly, a cold look in his eye while Raven looks to Naruto, fear giving way to rage as she then forms her usual black energy and rips a solar pipe out of the ground to coil it around the masked madman. Skies will burn. Slade utters while flaring his fire to burn through it. Flesh will become stone. Slade continues while Raven picks up everything she can and hurls it towards the one-eyed man. The sun will set on your world. Slade states even as several of the boxes slam into him, only for him to continue forward. Never to rise again. Slade states before exploding into a burst of flames, Naruto and Raven looking around for the man, only for him to fling a blast of fire into Naruto from behind, and grasp Raven by her upper arms. Gritting her teeth, Raven feels the same pain as before Slade finally releases her, her upper arms now bearing the same marks as her wrists. Quickly covering them, Raven looks up to Slade as he crosses his arms behind his back. Time won't wait forever. You can't run away from who you are. Slade states only for a swirling ball of energy to slam into him from the side and send him flying through a building. Looking to where it came from, Raven saw a truly pissed off Naruto kick some rubble from his body, his mask 3/4 complete, and both of his eyes now looking more sinister than ever. I've heard you spout enough shit for one day, candy corn face. Naruto roared out furiously while marching over to Raven, Slade making his way out of the hole in the building, his ribs visible through his torn armor. You are very persistent. Even when your own power is fighting against you, you manage to come out on top. Slade noted and Naruto snorted while glaring at the man, only for an idea came to him, a wide crooked grin forming on his face as it did. Card-chan, I'll buy you some time, but I need you to get as far away from me as you possibly can. Naruto suddenly ordered and Raven would have objected only to feel her heart stop as he looked at her with one of his sinister eyes. The eye was blood red, the slit pitch black and deep, as if it was part of a pit. Worse still was that this glare, the white of his eye, was also a deep obsidian black, and the skin covered by his mask shadowed heavily. I said go. Naruto ordered while turning back towards Slade as Raven formed her soul self and flew away, a deep scowl across the blonde's face. So, what do you plan to do to me this time? More dismemberment? Behead me? Cut me in half? Or perhaps you'll try and kill me with all your witty quips? Slade questioned dryly and Naruto grinned towards the man darkly. Oh, that's simple, I'm just going to give back what you gave. The blonde replies while lunging forward and grabbing Slade by his neck. Closing his eyes, Naruto uses a shunshin, pulling himself and Slade out of Jump City and into the desert, just to be on the safe side. So here it is, candy corn face. All the power you pumped into me, right back in your face. The blonde says darkly as a dome of red energy forms around the two, Naruto pulling as much of the demonic chakra to a single point inside of him as he possibly can. Narrowing his eye onto the blonde, Slade forms a fireball in both of his hands, only for Naruto to give a wicked grin, as his lips turn black, and he unleashes all of the demonic chakra at once. A second later, a massive explosion surges from both of them. The land crumbles as a quake rocks the very earth beneath them. The energy expands outwards, crimson energy ripping apart land, and throwing dirt and rock to and fro. Soon enough the explosion dies down, and a mushroom cloud rises up into the air, easily visible from Jump City. In the city, Raven notices the explosion and turns towards the dust cloud for a moment. Biting her lip, she considers going towards it, only to shake her head and fly away, remembering what Naruto told her, and just how serious that soul lie of his had looked to her. Back at the epicenter of the blast, Naruto groans lightly while slowly pushing himself up. Looking to his hands, he smirks when he sees he's dispersed the excess demonic chakra from himself. Truly impressive, I commend your ability to get out of any situation, Uzumaki-san. Slade's half-demonic voice came and Naruto cursed while turning around, then watched on as the one-eyed man's arm rose out of the ground. Growling lightly, Naruto then pushed himself up and watched as Slade pulled himself out of the ground, his mask half melted away. Kami-sama, you really are a monster, aren't you? Naruto whispered mostly to himself upon seeing the visage of a skull beneath Slade's mask, only for it to heal over in a matter of seconds. cracking his neck afterwards. Slade then crossed his arms behind his back, while Naruto scowled deeply, lightning flowing over his form as he did. Now, there's no need to call each other names. Slade noted coldly while Naruto crouched down while throwing his arms to his sides, lightning arching from his limbs and flowing over his form. I've cut you to pieces, crushed you, broken you in half, and even blown you to bits, so what does it take to fucking kill you? Naruto snarled while glaring at Slade heatedly, the one-eyed man merely staring at the blonde. Nothing you can do can truly destroy what is already dead. Slade stated coldly, and Naruto blinked before he realized what that meant. Doesn't mean I can't try. The blonde roared while crouching down, then lunged at Slade, forming a Rasengan into his hand and slamming it into, and then through Slade's guts, only for the man to move one step back, with Naruto's arm now pierced through his midriff. Try as much as you like, no matter what you do to me, my master won't allow me to die. Slade hissed out while dematerializing into a burst of fire, Naruto cursing as he looked around for the one-eyed man. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to pay a visit to dear Raven, I still have a message for her. Slade's ominous voice echoed out, and Naruto slammed his foot into the ground with a scowl. Damn it. I knew I should have tagged Kara-chan with the Horatian seal. The blonde said to himself before using the Shunshin to return to Jump City, hoping he could find Raven before Slade managed to. Raven was hiding in a chapel of all places. While she was never very religious, for obvious reasons, she truly hoped someone was looking out for her for once. However, when she heard an explosion just as she was sent to the floor, Raven grimaced and turned to see a newly reformed Slade walking towards her. It's just you and me now, kid. Slade noted while Raven quickly turned and bolted for the rear exit, Slade silently following after her. Coming to the rear exit, Raven throws open the door to an abandoned alley, while Slade throws a blast of fire after her. Rushing out of the way, Raven then rushes down the alley, Slade following her with his left hand still ablaze. You're making this much more difficult than this needs to be. The man states coldly while throwing the fireball he'd formed in his left hand, creating a barrier of flames to block Raven's path. The message must be delivered. Slade states coldly, while Raven almost unconsciously forms into her soul self to flow through the flames, reforming into herself once past them. Grunting, Slade then forms a fireball into both hands and jets after the girl, following her like a man possessed. Flying around and past buildings, Raven only half notices that Slade is matching her move for move. Looking around for any way to escape, Raven dives down towards a busy street, yet once more, Slade follows her. Feeling more and more frightened, Raven hurls several cars at the masked madman, however he merely dodges one of them, then smashes the next two in half with his fists. Widening her eyes, Raven quickly flew away from the madman, while Slade narrowed his eyes and started to rub his hands together for a moment. Lashing out, Slade threw his hands towards Raven, long tendrils forming before flaming hands reached for the girl. Cursing lightly, Raven quickly moved out of the way of the hands, ducking and dodging them, as Slade continued his single-minded pursuit of her. Turning around, Raven forms black energy around her hands, and fires a hail of obsidian bullets towards them like a machine gun. Sadly, the attack has no effect whatsoever, and Raven turns and picks up her speed in order to evade them. Seeing a narrow alleyway up ahead, Raven moves between the buildings, the two hands dissipating as they impact with the buildings, only for Slade to continue his pursuit. Looking to either side, an idea comes to Raven as she hurries forward, putting on the speed only to turn once clear of them. Seeing Slade oncoming, Raven throws her hands to either side and concentrates on the two buildings. Black energy crawls its way over the two buildings, while Slade merely continues to fly closer and closer to Raven. Azarath Metrian Zinthos, she exclaims before throwing her hands inwards, the two buildings slamming together on top of Slade. Breathing out and bowing her head, Raven briefly wonders just how much damage she just caused, only to widen her eyes as the upper levels of the building suddenly explode outwards. Slade emerges from the smoke and with a low growl tackles into Raven, slamming into her and plowing her into a tall circular observatory-like building. As the smoke clears from their impact, Raven quickly hurries away from Slade, while the undead madman slowly rises up and continues after her. Following her closely, Slade reaches out and grips a fistful of the girl's cloak in one hand. What you have concealed, you shall become. The man states darkly while ripping the cloak from Raven, the girl falling down, and showing that her leotard is now torn from her neck down all the way to her belt. However, just like her arms, scarlet runes have started to appear on her back, Raven turning to look at Slade as he glares down at her. You have no other choice, he states, and Raven's eyes flare white while she turns and rises back to her feet. No? She exclaims while charging at the man, obsidian energy flowing around her form, swinging one hand at him only for him to grip it, and her power to dissipate in a mere instant. The message will be delivered, Slade states coldly, and Raven flings her other arm at the man only for him to catch it as well. Your destiny shall be fulfilled, Slade hisses in a low venomous tone, while Raven looks at him in horror, only to unleash a series of torture groans as she rears her head back, white light flowing out of her eyes, as the S mark on Slade's forehead forms over top the gemstone on her own. As this happens, more runes start to appear on her body, her armor burning away and disintegrating along with her leotard, soon leaving her in the equivalent of ragged and tattered halter top and briefs with her belt askew on her hips. However, this is not the only change as the moon and sun seem to set and rise numerous times, Raven's hair lengthening and growing to near waist length, while Slade watches on coldly. Seconds later, the undead madman releases Raven, causing her to fall to her knees, and wraps her arms around herself. Looking down to her arms, she then unfolds them and is horrified to see the runes now almost completely encompass her form. Looking away from that in her now completely ruined outfit, Raven then gazes out over Jump City, her eyes widening at what she sees before her. The sky is red as blood, the city is a deserted wasteland, everything has been completely destroyed and decimated, Titan's tower stands askew in the distance, molten lava has replaced the water of the bay, below her, four-eyed ravens caw and fly out into the night, statues of her friends. Almost like ghoulish gargoyles, disturbing creatures with long thin arms and misshapen faces holding onto them, almost appearing to be trying to drag them below. No? Raven whispers with wide eyes while slowly getting back to her feet, and Slade comes up from behind her and leans his head close to her ear. Yes. Look at it. Drink it in. Slade orders darkly while gazing out at the completely ruined world below them. Behold the world you are destined to create. Slade states while in the distance a shadow rises up, antlers on either side of its head, and four brightly glowing red eyes. The shadow then roars loudly while a second one slowly shakes itself while getting up, it also in shadow showing a beast, its ears both long like a rabbit, and 9 thin tails flowing behind it, as it screeches loudly into the air. No? Raven states while clasping her hands to the sides of her head. I won't do it. This is just a vision. This can't be real. The girl exclaims while Slade reaches for her upper arms and grasps them tightly. This is the future. He states while leaning over her shoulder once more. Your future. It began the day you were born, and nothing can stop it. This will come to pass. I will make sure of it. You're going to destroy the world, Raven. Slade whispers while raising his head back up. It's written all over your face. He states simply while Raven's eyes suddenly blaze a bright white. No? The girl exclaims loudly, her soul self flowing out of her body and into the sky, flashes of light illuminating everything around her. The sky and world around her is suddenly returned to normal, while her soul self disintegrates in the air, waves of energy restarting time for the city. As it ends, Raven suddenly falls forward, slumped with Slade still grasping her arms. We'll be in touch. Slade notes quietly while releasing the Titana, causing her to plummet off of the building. Oh, and happy birthday. Slade notes coldly while Raven plummets towards the ground below, only for a yellow flash to catch her before she could become street pizza. Groaning lightly, Naruto looks up towards where Slade was, only to narrow his eyes when he sees the man is missing. Bastard, I swear I'll get you for this. The blonde thinks to himself before looking to the unconscious girl in his arms, and stands up to look towards Titan's tower. Looking down when he hears a slight groan, Naruto smiles softly when he sees Raven open her eyes. Let's get you home, Card-chan. The blonde states before both vanish in a swirl of leaves. Titan's tower. 1 a.m., Raven is before a mirror on her wall, staring at a reflection. Mostly, however, the girl is gazing at her hair, wondering if she should even bother to cut it. She is currently dressed once more in a repaired outfit. A long blue cloak with 2 gold jewel-encrusted brooches to hold it down, a sleeveless black leotard, thigh-length black boots, black leather waist armor, black leather armor, bicep-length fingerless gloves over her forearms and wrists, with gem-encrusted brooches on the backs of her hands. And of course her classic gem-encrusted chain belt hanging askew on her hips with the gold tassel falling down one hip. It's not like it'll stay short for long with all this happening now, but it's just too much trouble for me to take care of. Raven thinks to herself before silently looking to her hands, gazing at the unmarked gray skin before sighing. Just as she's about to reach for a pair of scissors, a loud knocking comes from her door. Not again. The violet-eyed girl thinks to herself with a sigh as she walks over to the door and slowly slides it open. Looking around while coming out of her room, Raven notices a trail of arrows on the ground at her side and raises a brow. Following the arrows, Raven soon comes to the Titan's ops center and mentally sighs. Opening the door, she's surprised when streamers go off and sees a newly repaired banner with the words, Happy Unbirthday on it. Blinking, she then looks farther down to see her friends, Cyborg holding a small and repaired cake, Beast Boy with a party hat on his head, and Kid Flash to the side on some crutches with a weak grin. Blinking for a moment, she then watches Beast Boy nervously step forward. Surprise. Beast Boy offers timidly while Raven then sees a soft smile on Cyborg's features. Look, we know you don't want a party. But after today, the Titanium Teen started only for Starfire to finish for him. We hoped you might reconsider. Starfire stated, and Raven then turned when she felt a pair of arms wrap around her, and saw a smiling Naruto's face. This one, you can blame on me. Naruto says with a grin, and Raven looks from her boyfriend to Beast Boy as he slides up towards her. Yeah, you may not like your birthday, but we're all glad you were born. Beast Boy states with a grin, Raven blinking as she looked from him to Naruto, then to her other friends and the Titans, and around at everything around her. We're going to need ice cream. Raven finally says, and Starfire laughs to herself happily, Beast Boy grinning widely. Come on right up. Beast Boy says while ducking to the kitchen portion of Ops, Cyborg grinning to himself. I'll cut the cake. The Metal Man states with a grin, only for Donna to follow after him with a slight frown. No, I will, you made it, and I should contribute to this party somehow. Donna states while Starfire claps her hands together happily. And I shall fetch the Thruckner. She exclaims before flying off, and Nightwing walks up to Raven and Naruto. You two sure you're okay? I heard what happened to you, Naruto, did Slade. Knight started to ask, and Naruto held up a hand with a smirk across his face, even as Beast Boy rushed past him with a couple gallons of ice cream, Starfire right behind the green furry teen. I'm fine, besides, it's nothing a little R&R with Card-chan here couldn't fix, I'm sure. Naruto replies, and Knight raises a brow before nodding his head slowly, and then took a serious look. I promise you both, we will find Slade, we'll figure out how he did what he did, and we'll bring him down. Knight then states before walking to the side to join the rest of his friends, Kid Flash sighing as Donna helps him over to a table they'd set up with chairs around him. Man, I so wish my leg wasn't busted. He grumbled aloud and allowed his head to fall forward, Donna rolling her eyes as she helped the speedster. Meanwhile, Naruto and Raven stayed in their position for a moment, only for Raven to give the blonde an amused look. Happy and birthday? She questioned, and a nervous grin crossed over Naruto's features for a moment. Well, it's not technically your birthday, besides you like that book, don't you? Naruto questioned the girl, and Raven merely smirked up at him. Yeah, just surprised you think of that. She replied softly and then looked to her friends, with Naruto spotting Beast Boy gorging himself on ice cream, while the others wait for them to join. Come on, let's go party while we still can, the fighting's over for now. Naruto states while moving towards the table, wrapping his arms behind his head, while Raven glances down at her hands and lowers her eyes. A pair of glowing scarlet runes suddenly forming over the palms of her hands. Maybe for now, but this was only just the beginning, Raven whispered before walking after Naruto silently. Slade stands in an underground cavern, looking up towards a wall as a ring of fire soon forms around his feet. The first task is complete, my masters, the message has been sent. The inscriptions are in place. Slade states while kneeling down as an S-shaped symbol appears on the wall, 4 eyes opening around it, while a flaming portal to the side shows Kyuubi's bloodthirsty eyes. She knows what she must do. The prophecy will be fulfilled. Slade utters coldly while looking towards the S-shaped seal for a moment, and mentally narrowed his eyes. Then the world of mortals shall soon be ended. Trigun's voice booms out while Slade keeps his head low, his soul eye gazing up towards the demon. You may leave us, prepare yourself for the second task that is to come, my servant. Trigun ordered, and Slade bit back a growl as he turned into flames and disappeared into nothingness, leaving Trigun and Kyuubi to their own devices. Hee-hee, all goes as according to our plan. The voice of the Kyuubi noted, a white evil grin across his face, while Trigun nodded. Yes. Human emotions are just too predictable. Trigun noted mostly to himself, with Kyuubi nodding in agreement with his partner. Soon we shall both be free, and this world will know our full wrath. Kyuubi declares while grinning darkly, and Trigun is silent for a moment before the scene in the flames change, showing the two demons their day of reckoning. Indeed, Kyuubi, very soon, our time shall have arrived, and the mortal world shall finally end. Trigun stated while Kyuubi grinned once more. Slade reappears within Ravager's base. Shaking his head for a moment, he walks to the main portion of the base and stops. He crosses his arms behind his back as he stands before a wall of monitors, gazing at them coldly while Ravager walks into the room and kneels behind him. Did you get them? Slade questions coldly, not bothering to turn to his only daughter, and she raises her head to look at his back. Yes, father. She replies while reaching to her belt, only to then hold up what looks like roughly a dozen gold rings, each one inscribed with familiar scarlet runes. And their previous owners. Slade questions even while turning his head slightly to look at his daughter with his sole remaining eye. Ravager merely smirks while moving the rings to one hand, then unsheaths one of her blades to show dried blood along its length. All were dealt with as you wish, father. Ravager replied, and Slade chuckled lightly while turning and walking down to Ravager. Excellent work, my dear. He complimented and reached to one of the rings before looking at it for a moment. Rings of Azar, taken from the last of Trigun's cult here in Jump City. Now with his followers out of the way, I won't have to worry about them interfering. Slade muses while slipping one of the rings onto his left ring finger, and Ravager looked at the remaining rings. What about the rest of them? She questions, and Slade tilts his head to her for only a moment before answering. Keep one. But the rest are a gift, for some allies you'll need. Slade replies while crossing his arms behind his back. Father, if it is not too much trouble to answer, why didn't you go after the rings yourself? Ravager questions as Slade walks away from her, the man stopping at a chair before rubbing his chin. It's actually quite simple, Rose. Should I have gone after the rings, Trigun's followers would have alerted their master that I was plotting against him. And, until I'm able to break free of him, I cannot allow him to see any deceit in my actions. Slade replies with a wave of his hand, then sat in the chair and swivels it around to look at the monitors on the wall once more. I see, thank you for enlightening me, father. But, who should I give the remaining 10 rings to? Ravager questions of her father, and the man mentally smirked while bringing up images of Tartarus. Little Raven will protect her friends, but what of Naruto's? His team will be of use against Trigun in the coming battle. Slade replies, and Ravager nods her head slowly before bowing to her father. I see. And I will not fail you, father. Ravager states before moving back into the shadows, Slade turning to where she had been, and allowing his single eye to soften. Such a good girl, though I never wanted this life for you, it seems you've made your choice on the matter. Slade says to himself before turning back to his monitors and starts bringing up anything he can on Trigun. You and the Kyuubi have your plans at the ready, and I have mine. Slade says to no one as he studies all he can. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.